What would you do if the one person you trusted to build a new life with, the one you called your reason for surviving, left you to die in the middle of a blizzard that swallowed the world whole? The wilderness of the Yukon is not a place that forgives. It is raw, ancient, and merciless, a place where man's pride is stripped away until nothing remains but instinct and breath. The storm came like a beast unleashed from the heavens, the sky collapsing into white, the earth disappearing beneath waves of snow. The air itself froze into needles that clawed at his skin. Each gust of wind screamed with the voice of 1,000 ghosts. He had once thought he understood cold, but this was something else. A cold that didn't just touch the body, but reached inside, seeking to extinguish the fragile spark of life that still flickered within. He remembered her face, her smile beneath the furs, her promise whispered beside a fire that now seemed like a dream. They had planned everything together, the journey, the cabin they would build, the life they would carve out of the wild. But dreams crumble fast when the world turns white. One moment she was beside him, her gloved hand holding his, and the next she was gone. Her figure fading into the snow, the sound of her footsteps erased by the storm. She took the sled, the food, the compass, and with them she took the last trace of trust. He screamed her name, but the wind devoured every word. The wilderness does not care about heartbreak. It only listens to silence. He walked until his legs could no longer obey, until his breath was a ghost on the wind. Every step was a war, every second a prayer whispered to a God he no longer believed in. His vision blurred, his thoughts scattered like snowflakes in the gale. The storm tore at him, stripping away hope, leaving only will. Yet somewhere in that endless whiteness something flickered, faint, golden, impossibly distant. A light. For a moment he thought it was a trick of the dying mind, a hallucination born of frostbite and despair. But when he blinked, it was still there, a trembling glow in the sea of white. He followed it, crawling, stumbling, falling, and rising again until his hands found rough wood. A door. He knocked once, twice before the darkness claimed him. When he awoke, warmth surrounded him. The sound of fire crackling filled the air, the scent of burning pine mingling with smoke. His body ached, but he was alive. He was wrapped in thick blankets, his clothes drying near the fire. Across the room sat a man, older, broad-shouldered, his beard dusted with gray, his eyes heavy with solitude. The cabin was small but sturdy, its walls lined with furs and old tools. The man said nothing at first, only nodded once, acknowledging the unspoken truth. He had found another soul the storm tried to take. Days passed in slow rhythm. The blizzard raged on outside, a living monster clawing at the walls, but inside the two men lived in uneasy silence. The younger man healed, strength returning to his limbs, but his heart remained heavy. The older man spoke little. His voice was rough like wind scraping against stone. In time, the silence between them softened. They shared food, fixed the fire, and spoke of the land. The older man had lived there for years, surviving where most would not last a week. Once he too had come with dreams, a wife, a child, a hope of something lasting. But the wilderness takes what it wants. Illness took his family and grief took his voice. The cabin became his refuge, his prison, his grave. As the days turned to weeks, the two men found themselves bound by a quiet understanding. The younger man told his story of betrayal, of love turned to poison, of the woman who left him to die. The older man listened without judgment, his eyes reflecting pain of his own. "The wild," he said finally, "doesn't break you. It shows you what you're made of." The words lingered like smoke, heavy and true. The storm continued to rage, food began to run low, and the firewood pile dwindled. Together they ventured out between gusts of wind, hunting, cutting wood, and fighting the cold that clawed its way back inside. The younger man learned the rhythm of survival, how to read the snow, how to hear danger in the silence. The older man taught him patience, not through words but through example. He moved with the stillness of someone who had accepted the world for what it was. Cruel, vast, and breathtakingly beautiful. But time, like winter, spares no one. The older man began to cough, a deep, rattling sound that echoed in the quiet nights. Fever took him slowly, gently, as though the wilderness itself was calling him home. The younger man fought to keep him alive, boiling water, tending the fire, praying to gods that never answered. But the old man knew it was his time. On his last morning, as the first pale light of dawn crept through the frost-covered window, he reached out a trembling hand and said, "Don't hate her. The storm wasn't her doing. Sometimes people leave because they're more lost than you are." Then he smiled, a small, fragile thing, and the light in his eyes faded like the dying embers of the fire. The blizzard ended that night. The world outside was silent again, transformed into a sea of white stretching endlessly beneath a sky of cold, impossible blue. The younger man buried the old one beneath the pines, marking the grave with a cross made of driftwood. He stood there for a long time, the wind brushing against his face, and felt something shift inside him. Not sorrow, not anger, but peace. The wilderness had taken much, but it had also given him something priceless: understanding. He packed what little remained, wrapped himself in the old man's coat, and stepped out into the dawn. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The cabin would remain, its fire long burned out, its walls holding the echoes of two souls who refused to be erased. As he walked, the snow glittered beneath the rising sun, and for the first time since the storm began, he felt warmth that came not from fire, but from within. He thought of the woman who had left him, of the promises they had made, and found that the hatred was gone. The wilderness had burned it away, leaving only clarity. He was no longer the man who had stumbled through the storm begging to survive. He was something else now. A survivor, reborn through frost and flame, carrying the memory of a stranger who saved his life. Each step forward was a vow to live, not out of anger or revenge, but out of gratitude. Because life, like the storm, is not something to conquer. It's something to endure. And as the wind whispered across the snow, carrying with it the ghostly echoes of the past, he smiled faintly and whispered into the silence, "Thank you." The wilderness didn't answer. It didn't need to. The sky above him burned with gold. The snow glittered like diamonds, and somewhere in that vast, unforgiving land, warmth still existed. Fragile, fleeting, but real. And wherever you are, we wish you warmth and safety.